So I imagine someone probably just got on and then has to do 450, 500 watts for 3 minutes to get up this climb. And that's got to hurt.
And Matt puts out, we're talking Matt Beers here, Matt puts out wild power. Like, he's a big dude,
Oh,
but
he's
his
insane.
power numbers are wild.
Well, in his wheel, it feels like he's a big dude. You feel like you should get a better draft than you do because he puts out so much power. You just feel like you don't actually get a draft because you're still putting out just as much power in his wheel. So massive.
Is there
talent.
any psychological advantage to going, oh, like I'm sitting at 440 in his wheel here. Like, he's got to be doing easy 540 up there. Like, that has to be hurt.
Yeah, I don't have power up when I race, but I mean, I know I'm at that level that if I'm hurting, everyone's hurting. So I think there is solace in that in terms of if I'm hurting behind him, he's hurting himself to do the effort, and anyone who's still with us is hurting, which every time that happens, you kind of are a little happy because your first 5 wheels. So imagine someone who's 25th wheel seeing gaps open up. Not only is it mentally taxing, but if they're going to go faster than Matt is at the front to get to the front, then that's either a really impressive rider or they're writing their own ticket.
Well, that's also where you're talking about that first win of the day's position in the top 15. Because for anyone that hasn't been in that position, if you find yourself 40 wheels back, initially you're doing the same draft maybe as someone in wheel 10, but then somebody in wheel 35 decides, oh, this is too much for me, and they pull out. So wheel 36 now has a bike length to close, and this happens all the way up the line. So you end up having all these extra gaps to close on top of the power, which Matt is putting out on the front.
Exactly.
What's the data look like in that first 30 minutes, having looked back at it in hindsight?
I haven't looked at it, but I can pull it up here real fast. Give the people the numbers.
Everyone loves numbers. We're just, because it's like clipping into a lie detector, and it also shines a light on our own inadequacies, and go, oh, my dream of actually maybe I could win Sea Otter is just, it's just that, it's just fiction.
Well, I think the consensus after the race that it was an incredibly hard race, but the Grand Prix is kind of frustrating because everyone feels like they've taken this massive step up every year, and that massive step up everyone seems to have taken. And so you get to the race and you, like, I think Dylan Johnson, and I appreciate him being super transparent about it, said I think he did 317 normalized for the race. Best PR for him ever for 38th. And just mind-blowing to him and to everyone that we're putting out power PRs and some riders are going backwards in placings.
I talked to Dylan last week, and he was super happy with how his winter had gone, how his preparation had gone. His numbers had never been looking better. And then yet to see that post was a bit like, oh, everyone else is training. I actually thought Keegan was going to go backwards. I said that on the podcast with Dylan. I was like, he's looked pretty second-hand in Cape Epic. You know, he's saying he had a back injury. He looked pretty second-hand in some of the other gravel races early season down in Texas. And I was like, this could be the year that Keegan doesn't lead the Grand Prix. And I looked at the results and I was like, oh, man.
I think those results without context are a little misleading. In Texas, there was a breakout front, and then the weather caused it to be called unexpectedly, and the winner didn't even know he won. So the race was supposed to run for another 3 hours. So Keegan was probably like, I'm happy with that break up the road. I'll catch him by the end. And then it didn't work out that way due to weather. And then Cape, yeah, I mean, it could go either way, right? But I think with him, it wasn't a fitness thing. It was a back thing. So as long as he can sort that out and figure out what caused it, maybe he tried a different fit on his mountain bike, whatever it could be. Maybe he went with the 40-tooth chain ring. Maybe that caused the cadence to be too low and he was just grinding too much. You know, I haven't talked to him about it, so it's all speculation. But I think for him, it could be anything in terms of what caused that. But I mean,
my hot prediction was that he was the dude that never happened to, though, for the last few years. You know, where you could say he got super lucky, or he never flatted, he got super lucky. He never got injured, he got super lucky. Another way you could look at that is he was super well prepared, so he never flatted or got injured.
Super well prepared. What I know about Keegan is that he does his homework. And yeah, there is a piece where, you know, there is luck involved with flats, but he also chooses setups that he knows he can run and be successful with. So yeah, I think no surprise, but maybe the field was also hoping that there was a chink in the armor for sure.
When you say the field, you mean you personally?
No, for sure. And the way he was riding wasn't usual Keegan dominance. Like he would go to the front at lookout and set the pace, and he would do his turns. But Keegan likes to ride from the front, and he likes to soften the field. And Matt was kind of filling that void
Yeah.
on Thursday.
Interesting. Did you find your numbers?
Yeah. So first 20 minutes was 352 raw, 411 normalized.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah. So
What's the total race file average normalized?
343 normalized for 4 hours and 22 minutes.
That's a big day on the ticket.
Oh, it was a day. Let me tell you.
And you're like high 60 kilogram.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not achievable for most mortals. What's this? You probably don't have access to it offhand, but what's this year's power profile feel like? You said everyone's moved on. How much do you think you've personally moved on from Sea Otter 2024 to Sea Otter 2025?
So I guess just raw data. The FTP I was training to last year was 380. The FTP I'm training to this year is 400.
Okay, big.
And it's possibly too low. But I also, even when it was 380, my brain, I guess, or the way I work is I really struggle to hit the bottom of ranges. I like to hit the middle top of ranges. So we actually artificially lower the FTP. Like we chatted about with doing 440 twice for 20. Theoretically, that would put me at 420 or roughly around there. But I think we decided 400 just because there's no point in just wringing myself out in training. So, I mean, real FTP, who knows? I think FTP is kind of just a dick swinging thing at this point and saying you do this much or you do that much. But I think I like to think of it of different mastery levels, like essentially how far into a race can you do that? How many times can you repeat that? I think those are the more important things. And so, but yeah, roughly, what is that? 5 to 8% increase year over year.
Yeah, that's huge. And I know that doesn't even capture something that we talked about last time that you've worked on a lot, that durability, the ability to put it out later in the race.
Well, the crazy thing is I did the Fuego XL 2 days later, and that power file was more.
Winner, chicken dinner.
I did 356 normalized for 405. So
How'd
I don't
you
know if
got
it's
them?
just my mountain bike background and we still need to tweak the fit on the crux to kind of have that same power delivery, or what we just talked about, maybe I do need to come into a race a little more revved or what it was. But I mean, this one for me is like, did I remember to calibrate my power meter? Like even for me seeing 356 for 4 hours, 2 days after probably the hardest gravel race in my life is just kind of unconceivable. And
What did you do in between? Because that was Sunday. Sea Otter was Friday. What did you do on Saturday?
It was Thursday, Saturday, and Friday. I just did an hour and a half spin on the mountain bike just to make sure I was familiar with it.
Okay. And yeah, it's pretty well, it speaks to that durability you've talked about, that so many podcasts and physiologists have gone ad nauseum about the limitations on assessing someone's ability just off FTP or just off a critical power number, because it doesn't show you what Van der Poel done in the final of Roubaix.
Well, I think there was
yesterday.
even a snippet from his team manager that says his fresh numbers aren't actually that impressive compared to those of his teammates, but he does a very, very high percentage of them 6 hours into a race.
Yeah, no, it's totally different. I remember training with friends who were World Tour, and that was the huge difference for me. Was I didn't have that word to put on it then. I was just like, oh, they're built different. But it'd be the 5 minute climb up to the cafe at the end of the spin when they're still putting out 550 or something. I'm like, what? Like, I can get close to these numbers fresh on a good day, but I can't go close to these after 5-6 hour spins.
Absolutely.
What does the weekend, what does it tell you about your preparation? Does it fill you with confidence, or is there still work to be done?
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly, my result could have been better. I made a few mistakes in the last lap. I had a caffeine gel ready for me going into the last lap and I missed it. And then at the next feed zone, I missed my bottle. So I still had fuel on board because I had carbs fuel in my pockets, but I wasn't drinking for a solid 30, 40 minutes. And then to kind of kick that off is as we were coming into the last feed zone, which I'm now forced to take a bottle from because I need it, that's when everything was kicking off. And I kind of just made that mistake of I grabbed the bottle and kind of sorted out the gels and put it in my bike. I should have just grabbed the bottle, thrown it on my bike, and worried about using it to hydrate later because there's a climb right after. And just that 1 to 2 seconds I let Keegan's wheel go was just the elastic snapping for me. And me and Peter Vakoch were chasing all the way to the bottom of Lookout, the lead 4. And then by the time I got there, I kind of had just punched my own ticket with that effort. So I think some learnings, but I mean, I'm there, right? 6th place overall, 5th place in the Grand Prix in arguably one of the hardest races we've seen at the Grand Prix level is super confidence inspiring. My XL time essentially solo was 4 minutes faster than I did in the Grand Prix last year.
Unreal.
So,
but does your XL time also give you hope into what's set up this year as a more mountain bikey focused series? Does it give you hope they're coming back to your terrain?
I still don't believe it's mountain bike focused. The only mountain bike race in there is Little Sugar. If we're honest with ourselves, Schwamigan is a grass crit, and then Leadville is becoming a gravel race. So
it's funny when you talk to the roadies, they're like, "Oh, it's a full mountain bike series now. I'm not even doing it." You talk to the mountain bike guys, they're like, "Ah, it's still a road series."
Yeah, I think we've always naturally had the advantage because it's all off-road. So even little things like at Unbound, right? If we take half a second out of someone who doesn't know how to handle their bike out of every corner over 10 hours, yeah, they can bridge up or whatever a few times, 100 times, but there's a lot of corners and there's a lot of times when just efficiency of rolling through that means that we're putting 5 to 10 watts less over the whole day. So I don't think we're articulating it right. I don't think it's a mountain bike series. I think it's an off-road series. And roadies come from road and mountain bikers come from dirt. And I think the crossover to a mountain bike is much more significant because we're used to our tires moving underneath us. We're used to that efficiency, slow in, fast out, looking for essentially that right line. So
I also think as roadies, and I'm heaping myself into that category, we've had to learn this totally new world, this new world of pressure, tires, tire widths. These weren't conversations that we ever had on the road. I can never remember being at a road race where this mattered until it started mattering in the hybrid gravel space. And now it matters in road, now it matters everywhere. But you guys have been having these conversations for a decade.
Absolutely. The way I think about it is we learn from the roadies from the waist up or from anything not touching
from
the
aero
ground.
socks up.
Yeah, exactly. So I would never have run 40 centimeter bars. I would have never looked at 165 cranks. I would have never worn aero socks or an aero base layer. That I learned from, well, Dylan Johnson. His YouTube, I think, is a blessing and a curse for him. But and then from everything touching the ground, I think that's what we're learning. We took cues from the wrong sport, and that's why everything's going to mountain bike tires. And I still run mountain bike pedals almost exclusively, but maybe I should start running road pedals at some races. But essentially that contact patch with the ground, I think it's only leaning more towards us now that, like you said, at Unbound, we're essentially going to be using mountain bike tires, something we've been using for years, and we know how that feels and how it connects with the ground. So we actually don't have to learn anything new. We already have the pressures dialed.
We have 3 long-form podcasts every week. Some of them are 90 minutes or 2 hours long, and I realize you're busy. sometimes it's hard to cut through the noise and figure out the signal, figure out what the important parts are of these conversations. So I've taken your feedback, and once a week I'm delivering to your inbox a newsletter called the Saturday Spin. It's a 4-minute read or less, and it's going to break down the very best thing I've learned on the podcast this week. So it's insights from the biggest names in the world tour, physiologists, sports psychologists, and coaches. It's completely free to sign up to the newsletter. All you have to do is go to roadmancycling.com, stick in your email address, and once a week on a Saturday morning, I will deliver the Saturday Spin newsletter direct to your inbox. The link is down below. Go sign up.